Hello, in this video, we're going to be going over dictionaries in Python. In the last video, we went over functions in Python, where we could define a function that performs a certain task, and then we can call that function in order to run it in the terminal. Additionally, we can also pass in parameters or arguments, in which the function is going to take those parameters or arguments as information, and run that certain information. Another thing that I want to point out is the difference between a parameter and an argument, since I mixed those two up in the last video. So the difference between a parameter and an argument is that a parameter is a placeholder that we pass in when we're defining a function, and an argument is what the user passes in when they're calling that function. So in the case of this hello world function, which is what we used in the functions video, this first name that we have in this line where we're defining this function is the parameter. So this first name is a parameter since we're using that when we're defining this hello world function. And the argument in this case is this world, since I am passing in this argument of world when I'm calling this function. So since I'm passing in this argument of world, it's going to go back to this defined function above and replace the placeholder or parameter with the argument that I just passed in. So it's going to replace this first name parameter with the world argument, and it's also going to replace this placeholder first name with the argument that I passed in, which is world in this case. So now that we know what the difference between a parameter and an argument is, I'm going to be going over what a dictionary is in Python. So a dictionary is basically a data structure, which is a collection of key value pairs. And a data structure is basically a particular way of storing and organizing data that we can use effectively throughout our computer programs. So in this case, how a dictionary works in Python is similar to a way how a dictionary works in real life. So the way that a dictionary works in real life is that we have a collection of words, and then we have those words' definitions. So we have the word and the definition next to that word. And so basically that's how it works in Python as well, in Python dictionaries, except the difference is that we can assign our own definitions. So in this case, we can assign our own keys and assign a value to that key that we created for ourselves. So the way that we notate a dictionary in Python is that we can define a variable. For example, we'll do dictionary, and this works similar to a way that a list works. The only difference being that the way that we notate a dictionary is that we have curly braces. Now recall, and how we notate lists is that we have the variable and set that equal to square brackets, and inside the square brackets is the data values that we include. But in this case, we're going to use curly braces in dictionaries. And inside those curly braces, we can provide the key value pairs. So in this case, I'm going to give an example of a key value pair. So if I say 1 and then Python, and so what this basically means is that this is a key of 1, and I'm assigning this key of 1 to this value of Python. And so what this colon does in the key value pair is that whatever is to the left of this colon is the key, and whatever is to the right of this colon is the value. So in this case, whatever is to the right of this value is Python. So this value of Python is going to be assigned to this key of 1, which is before this colon. And in order to separate key value pairs, we use a comma. And so after this comma, I'm just going to add another key value pair. So I'm just going to do, for example, 2 and then Java. And this also works the same way. We have this 2 as a key, colon, and we have this value of Java, which means that we're assigning this key of 2 to this value of Java. And we're using colons to assign the keys to those values. And so basically we can differentiate between these key value pairs through the commas. So here we can tell that this is the first key value pair, which means that this key of 1 is associated with this value of Python, and then this is another key value pair in which there's a key of 2, and that is assigned to a value of Java. So now I'm going to be adding one more key value pair just to show how dictionaries work. So for the example, I'm going to do 3 as a key and assign that to a value of programming. So now that I declared a dictionary variable, now let's print it out to see how this works. So all I need to do is just do print and then open and close parentheses, and inside these parentheses I just need to print out the variable. So now if I run this, it's going to print out the whole dictionary for me. It's going to have this whole collection of key value pairs that are each separated by commas. And here's also printing out the key and then associated with its value. So here's a key with the 1 associated with the value Python, comma, which means that this is one key value pair. And then we have another key value pair with a key of 2 and associating that key to the value of Java. And then we have a comma, and we have a key of 3 here as the last key value pair, assigning the value of programming to that key. So now that we know how a dictionary works in Python, I'm going to pointing out a small thing. Now, when we have a key value pair and we're having a string, now recall that in list we can have strings and numeric values like 1, 2, 3. This also works similar to dictionaries in Python, where we can have numbers as well as strings when we're assigning values. So here we have a value of programming. If I remove these quotation marks, it's going to give me an error. So if I remove these quotation marks, it's going to give me an error saying name programming is not defined. And so whenever we're trying to use strings in a dictionary as values, we need to make sure that we use quotation marks in order for it to work. So now if I add these quotation marks around these programming, now it's going to work. But when we use numeric values like 1, 2, 3, for example, so if I just say this key of 3 has a value of 1, now we don't need to have quotation marks around numeric values like 1, 2, 3, and so on. So here in this case, I have 1 without quotation marks, and it still works. And if it wouldn't matter if I put quotation marks around this integers, since it would mean the same thing, since it would still work either way. So that's just what I wanted to point out. So when we're using strings, we need to make sure that we use quotation marks in values, or unless if you're using integers like 1, 2, 3, and so on, then we don't need to use quotation marks. And that also works similarly to how lists work, in which when we're using strings, we need to make sure that we use quotation marks. So now that we know how a dictionary is formatted in Python, now we're going to be going over how to index into a dictionary in Python. So the way that indexing is, recall, what indexing means is that from the list video is that index allows you to go to a certain position in that list. And so basically the way that we notate index of a list is that we have the variable name and we have these square brackets after that variable name in this print statement. So now if I wanted to print out the first element of a list, we can consider this dictionary as a list. So if I wanted to print out this first element, I would need to do 0 inside these square brackets. Since if we wanted to access the first element of a list, we start counting from 0. And it goes on until it reaches the end of this list. So if I try to print out dictionary and then square brackets, and then inside these square brackets I have the 0, which means the first element. And now if I try to run it, it's going to give me an error saying key error 0. So the way that we're indexing into a dictionary is going to work differently than how we're indexing into a list. So the way that we index into a dictionary is that instead of this number that we pass in these square brackets, we're going to have to give the name of the key. And so what this is going to do is going to print out the value of whatever is at key 1. So in this case, we have the key 1, and the value of that key 1 is Python. So this is basically going to print out Python, since it's going to print out whatever value is at key 1 that we defined here in our key collection of key pairs. So now if I try to print this out, it's going to print out Python. Now if I want to print out Java, if you look in this dictionary, you see that there's a key of 2 and a value of Java. So I need to look at the key of that Java. So in this case, the key of Java is 2. So now if I wanted to print out Java, then all I need to do is switch this 1 to a 2. And I need to make sure that we use quotation marks and 2. So what this is going to do is that it's going to look through this dictionary, and wherever you find this key, so in this case we have dictionary square brackets, inside these square brackets we have the key name, it's going to look through our dictionary, and wherever it finds that key, it's going to print out the value of that key. So now if we try to run this, it's going to print out Java. So now that we're able to print out values of keys, now we will need to figure out how we can print out keys instead of the values. So the way that we can print out keys in a dictionary is that, recall, we can cast values, which means convert from one data type to another. So I can convert this dictionary into a list. And the way that this works is that I can set initialize a new variable, or declare a new variable. So I can say list dictionary and set that equal to dictionary. So whatever is on this right side is going to be stored on this variable. But instead of just having dictionary, recall how casting works is that we have the data type and we have open and close parentheses. And inside these open and close parentheses is the variable that we want to change from one data type to another. So in this case, we have this originally this variable which is a dictionary, and we want to convert this dictionary into a list. So now if I try to print out this list dictionary, so if I try to print this out, it's going to print out the whole list. So it's going to print out Java, which is this print statement up here, and it's going to print out this list, which is 1, 2, 3. And if you look here in the dictionaries variable, you can see 1 as being the first key in the first key value pair, and we see 2 in the next key value pair. So basically what this is doing is that we're converting from a dictionary to list. So what this list is doing is just adding all the keys into this list. So it's just adding this one in the first key value pair, going to the next key value pair, and adding this key, and going to the last key value pair that we have in this case, which is 3, and we have 1 here in this case. So it's adding this 1, and it's adding this 2, and lastly it's adding this 3 into this list. And recall how to index into a list is, as you may recall from the list videos, all we need to do is so I'll just use this print statement here. So how you can index into a list is simply have this list dictionary, and then open and close square brackets, and in these square brackets I could just specify the number of whatever position I want to print out. So in this case, if I wanted to print out this first element, I need to print 0, since we start counting as 0 when we're indexing into a list. So now if I try to print this out, it's going to print out the first element of that list, which is 1. So these are mixed up since we have 2 is equal to Java here. So now if we wanted to change this so that 1 equals Python, we could just go up here and change this dictionary 1. We could go to this print statement above and just change this 2 to a 1 so that it prints out this Python value here. So now if I try to print this out, it's going to print out Python, since this print statement is just going to look through this dictionary, and wherever we find the key of 1, it's going to print out the value of that key. So in this case, Python. And we have this variable here that just basically converts this dictionary to a list and only arranges this, the keys. And now if we print out the first value, the first element of that list, we can get the key here of 1. So now if I wanted to print out 2 Java here, what I would need to do is print out dictionary 2, which means it's going to print out the value of this 2, and it's going to print out Java. So if I run this, it's going to print out Java. And now if I want to print out 2 in this case, I could just go to the second element of that list. So I could do 1 in order to access the second element of that list. So now that we know how indexing into keys and values work in a dictionary, now we're going to be going on to appending or adding key value pairs into a dictionary. So say if I wanted to add this key value pair that I forgot to add here, I could just go here. Now recall in the list video, the way that we can add data values in a list is that we have the method called append. So the way that would work is that we have dictionary, which is the variable name, and dot in order to gain access to this method of append. And inside these, and then we have append, and then this open and close parentheses, and whatever these is in, whatever we can, whatever's in these parentheses, we could just put the data value that we want to add. So in this case, if I wanted to add, for example, like a 4th key value pair, I could just do 4 dot for example, I could just say C, for example. So if I try to run this, it's going to give me an error saying invalid syntax. And basically, when you're adding key value pairs to dictionaries, it's going to work differently than how you're appending or adding data values to a list. So the way that we can do this is that it's going to work similarly to how we index into a dictionary. So we have the dictionary variable, and here we give open and close square brackets. And inside these square brackets, we can give in our new key value pair. So if I want to give a new key value pair after we've defined these 3 key value pairs, I'm just going to say for example, since that's the 4th key value pair. So now that we create this new key, we're going to have to make sure that we assign it to whatever value we want the key of 4 equal to. So in this case, we have this 4 key. And for example, we can set that equal to C in this case. So now if you try to print out this dictionary, after we've added this, a key value pair into this dictionary. So now if you run it, now it's going to print out this whole dictionary, including the 1 key value pair that we added. So it's had this 1 Python, 2 Java, and then 3 1, which we had originally. and we can add the key value pairs if you forgot it in this dictionary variable, and it's going to add this for C. So that's a way that we can add key value pairs, and it's basically different than how we add data values in a list, but it works similarly to how we're indexing into a dictionary, in which we have this dictionary or a variable name, and we have the square brackets, and inside these square brackets is the key that we want to add, and we set that equal to whatever value we want that key equal to. So in this case, we're saying a key of 4 and saying that equal to a value of C. So now that we went over dictionaries in Python, we're going to be going over libraries and how to import them in the next video.